All right. Yes, we are live. Hello, welcome back for another episode of the Bully O Line podcast. It's me, birthday boy, Joseph Laney Pavlon, along with me.
Happy birthday, brother.
Thank you. Thanks. Great to live another year. Thanks for joining me tonight, Danny.
No problem.
Yep. And, of course, happy belated birthday to Justin, who, of course, was 7 days before me. So that was the last podcast as well. So here's that. And here we are back with another episode. Got a lot of racing to talk about. Just an outstanding weekend of I'd say on and off the track action, and even as far as today, this morning, with the rumors of Audi potentially purchasing McLaren being denied. McLaren denied those reports, so those reports are false. There's no worries for you, Orange fans. McLaren is not going anywhere. Anything else I have to say is, well, just give as many obstacles in front of Lewis Hamilton, and you know what? You're only asking him to perform better on race day. If I can count, going into the race at Brazil, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, he already had to suffer an engine penalty, and he, I guess, used an illegal DRS. Had illegal DRS in the car. So what happened? The FIA disqualified Lewis Hamilton's fastest lap time. Or was it fastest lap, or was it Bottas? Whoever it was, Hamilton had to start in the sprint qualifier in the back. An outstanding drive in the sprint qualifying race put Lewis Hamilton from 20th to 5th. And of course, the engine penalty meant that he had to start 5 spots back. That did not stop Lewis Hamilton whatsoever. It only made him faster. This is the Lewis Hamilton show. This is the Lewis Hamilton way of racing. We've seen it, and that's why he has 7 championships, world championships, to his name. There's no questioning Lewis Hamilton's driving abilities. It's all a display of talent. And, of course, Lewis Hamilton, throughout the entirety of the weekend, paid homage to Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian, who was the definition of driving talent. Go ahead, Danny.
I'll tell you what, man. That drive from Lewis Hamilton. You want to talk about from worst to first? This is it right here. You let him start by 5 spots back on the grid, and he will work his way up. It's like seeing Jimmy Johnson start away from dead. Remember 2016? Jimmy Johnson started from dead last to win the race and his 7th championship. This is the same thing we've seen here at Sao Paulo in Interlagos.
That's right. See, Max Verstappen had a 19-point lead. It looked to be like the largest lead he ever had in the World Championship at all this year, only to pull away even more so going to Interlagos, a track that Verstappen's very good at. But that was not meant to be. Lewis Hamilton, of course, interrupted the party that Max Verstappen has put together for himself in Red Bull at the time that they've gone west of the Atlantic Ocean. And clearly it has shown that Lewis Hamilton, of course, the experience that he has in those 7 championships, didn't explain why. Hamilton, had 3 lap older tires, if I'm not mistaken, and took advantage, still found the faster line around Interlagos. That's not an accident at this point. You can't just blame Mercedes. This is all in the hands of the driver. 36 years old, experience. He's been in the sport quite longer than most drivers have ever been in the sport. I think he's like an elder statesman. If you rule out Kimi Räikkönen and Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton is really next in line as far as drivers who enter in F1 from, earliest in relation to present day. All in all, this is Lewis Hamilton's race weekend. He really showed flashes of Senna. He showed flashes of Schumacher, and he certainly also showed some flashes of Alain Prost in that race. And of course, 101 career wins. No drivers ever come close to that. Hamilton getting on the podium for the 179th time in his career. The World Championship is far from over. I think, in my humble opinion, the checkered flag at Yas Marina Circuit in Abu Dhabi in less than a month will be what decides this World Championship.
Absolutely, man, because both Verstappen and Hamilton are pretty much, at each other's throats for this World Championship. You know what I mean? With both consistency and talent behind the wheel from these two drivers and these two teams are really showing what F1 is about nowadays, And This is a really good show to see.
Very big. Listen, I don't know what else to say. I've constantly said if you're not watching F1 this year, I don't know what you're doing. You're missing out.
Exactly.
This is huge stuff. It's some of the. It's been a long time coming for a World Championship season to go down like this. We've been longing for one, and here it is. This is some of the best racing yet. Let's continue down to the race results from Sunday's Grand Prix. Max Verstappen looked like he hit the car to win. He certainly had the best drive out there. Max Verstappen led 51 laps in relation to Lewis Hamilton. Of course, Lewis only led for 17. Verstappen had, of course, 2 points from the sprint qualifying race, 3 points for the sprint qualifying winner, 2 points for second place, and 1 point for third place in the sprint qualifying round. So that definitely helped Verstappen's cause. He's done better than Hamilton on that component across all 3 races with the sprint qualifying format at this point. His 57th career podium, a drive that Max Verstappen had. It looked like he had the best race in the bag, but it was kind of lost in pit road and on the track. He just had one better driver than himself on Sunday. Let's continue on the race results, and now we're going to talk about from Drivers' Championship to the Constructors' Championship, because that is also brewing for the second week in a row now. Because Mercedes, AMG, Petronas, they threw away the Constructors' Championship margin that they had almost this entire season to Red Bull. Let's continue on third place here. Valtteri Bottas, doing his job at Mercedes, getting the 3 points from pole position via winning the sprint qualifying race. That is Bottas's 20th career pole, and on the podium for the 66th time in his career. Mercedes get double points, double podium. But you look at fourth place, the fastest lap point goes to Sergio Perez. Checo got the fastest lap through the dust of the fireworks in the closing end of the race because the leaders were halfway in their cool-down lap while he was still posting the fastest lap, trying to wrap up his fourth place finish. And Checo did it right. 1 point in the fastest lap. People said in 2019 when it first came out in Formula One that it's not going to mean anything to the World Championship. It's just 1 point. Well, yeah, 1 point matters just as much as even half a point from this year's Belgian Grand Prix. If anything, Sergio Perez did everything you could ask from a teammate in the perception of one that is leading the World Drivers' Championship in Max Verstappen. He's helping out Red Bull. And I think this is very complimentary for this constructor. It's been since 2013, almost 9 years since they last won the World Constructors Championship, and boy, it would be even greater than a Drivers' Championship should they win it this year with the odds against them. Now, mind you, the Constructors Championship leaving last week was a single point. It was Mercedes, even from the end of round one, had a good lead in the World Constructors Championship and pulled away. But it's an 11-point gap right now, and it takes 2 to tango to help your constructor in this championship. Double points finishes are not going to be enough anymore. You can't just have Valtteri finish in 8th or 9th with the fastest lap, or Sergio in 5th or 6th, or 8th, 9th, 10th with the fastest lap. No, they need to be finishing 3rd and 4th. This is serious business. And Mercedes, if they don't wake up now, it might be over on the Constructors Championship. They may not be able to go, 9 straight? Yeah, 8 or 9 years straight with the World Constructors Championship in this turbo hybrid era. Trying to close this era out with perfection. It might be in jeopardy. We'll have to see. Fifth place and sixth place go to the Ferrari drivers. Charles Leclerc started sixth. He finished fifth. Starting third, of course, with the sole point from the sprint qualifying race was Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz brought home sixth. Ferrari get double points. A nice points day for Ferrari, of course, in relation to McLaren Mercedes. Now, McLaren Mercedes, they had an awful race on Sunday, only scoring 1 point from Lando Norris. And of course, Lando Norris, should be lucky he even got that point considering the awful start he had. Ricardo's retirement had just bad consequences. In fact, it's 10 weeks in a row or 2 weeks in a row that one McLaren good. Got a point, sole point from 10th. And Ferrari's going to pull away for third if it stays like this for the next 3 weeks when they go to the Middle East. Let's continue down the results. We have two French drivers right here that saw wins in the past 2 years. AlphaTauri's Pierre Gasly. Another great run for Pierre Gasly. Started 7th, stayed in the points all day, finishes in 7th, ahead of countrymate Esteban Ocon, who started 8th and brought his Alpine in 8th, 1 position over the Alpine driver's teammate of Fernando Alonso. Good showing for the veteran. Alonso started 12th, and Alpine gets double points. 10th place, likewise, who I said earlier, Lando Norris, who started in 5th. All right, now who fell shy of the points? Well, man, these veterans, they try hard. Even if they don't get points, you still have to give them credit for where they finish. Sebastian Vettel in 11th, he started in the 9th spot. And how about Kimi Räikkönen, who started way in the back, dead last in 20th, brought his Alfa Romeo Ferrari, that Sauber sloth, to 12th. That's not a bad run at all.
That's not, man, I got to tell you, I got to give credit to Kimi Räikkönen. And, as sad it is to see this is his last year in F1, what a drive from that guy, man. What an excellent job he's done yesterday.
Yeah, still going strong. And maybe this is the track where the veterans seem to have the upper hand. I'm just delighted to see that he still has what it takes to stay in the upper half of the field. 13th place, George Russell. Just the car held it back like most Grand Prix this year. But still doing a fantastic job as far as helping the Williams team in his last year at Williams. Then Antonio Giovinazzi in 14th, the Alfa Romeo. 15th goes to Yuki Tsunoda, who started there as well. Nicholas Latifi, I don't know. Nicholas, the toothpick Latifi, getting in the way of Max Verstappen's pit exit. There, nothing against Nicholas Latifi, but, when you're back market, you got to have a little bit of a more decent mindset when it comes to the leaders approaching you in the pits. That actually is one of the reasons why Verstappen kind of lost the Grand Prix, but Latifi brought it home in 16th, was classified at the end of the race. Nikita Mazepin, I'm a little impressed, believe it or not. I know we talk down a lot on Nikita Mazepin, but he started 19th. He actually outdrove Mick Schumacher, one of the rare occasions that's happened on the track without any, side effects happening to Schumacher. Actually, he did get a wing replacement in one of the early laps, but hell, he added some interesting moves on Mick Schumacher, his Haas teammate. Of course, Mick starting in 18th and finishing there too. Those were the last two drivers to finish yesterday's Grand Prix in Sao Paulo. Then our two retirements. Danny Ricardo, Italian Grand Prix winner from this year. Ricardo gets no points for the second week in a row. He had an engine failure on lap 49. His McLaren Mercedes power unit ended before the race did. And that is never a pleasant feeling. And last place, retired once again, Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll has not seen points in 4 out of the last 5 races. Excuse me. Lance Stroll still sits at 26 points in his Aston Martin Mercedes. No off week, believe it or not. They go right overseas, back overseas, this time to the Middle East in Losail International Circuit for the first time ever. We will have the Qatar Grand Prix this weekend. Of course, we get 3 races remaining. We had our 3 races west of the Atlantic Ocean in the Americas. We had U.S., Mexico, and Brazil. Now we go to the Middle East where the World Championship ironically started. We go to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi. 2 of the 3 Grand Prix that I mentioned that are coming up ahead of us have never been held before. New tracks, new locations, unknowns. Of course, the 21st of November this weekend for the Qatar Grand Prix, first ever time. And then in 2 weeks' time, we have the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix.
I was just about to talk about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, December 5th, man. I'm very interested to see what plays out in that second to last race.
Yep. On and off the track. And then a week later, we're going to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at Yas Marina Circuit. Normal, right? No, not at all. They have edited parts of the circuit. The Yas Marina Circuit has a lot of changes made compared to the Yas Marina Circuit that we're very used to in the years prior to this year's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which might add to the unknowns of this World Championship. That's all I'm going to say. It's incredible to see what it has all come down to. This time last year, ironically, a full year ago today, we were on the podcast talking about how Lewis Hamilton clinched his record-tying 7th World Championship. And here we are with the World Championship way far from being done anytime soon. What do the points look like right now? It is Max Verstappen, who has a very short championship lead, a very short lead in the World Championship now. Verstappen with 332.5 points. Of course, Max Verstappen just 14 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton with 318.5 points, leaving Brazil. Then, of course, way back down in third is Valtteri Bottas with 203 points, hanging on very well to that spot. I don't think Sergio Perez could reach him unless Bottas has just bloatfully off races coming up ahead 3 in a row, because Checo is in fourth with 178 World Championship points. 5th place in the World Championship, Lando Norris goes from 150 to 151 by finishing 10th. 6th place and 7th place, Charles Leclerc is knocking on the door for 5th in the World Drivers' Championship with 148 points, while Carlos Sainz Jr. is in 7th with 139.5 points. 8th place, Daniel Ricardo sits at 105 points, not gaining anything from his retirement at Sao Paulo. 9th place, Pierre Gasly ups to 92 points, and Fernando Alonso launches to 62 points. Now we get to talk about the World Constructors Championship. This is where things are starting to become new. Obviously, Mercedes is no longer in their own bubble with the World Constructors Championship lead. After last week's race, they had an awful Mexican Grand Prix. Mercedes went from 38 points to 1 point, it was 32 points to 1 point, because 2 drivers takes 2 to have a good race for the constructors. But they extend their championship lead again. Their constructor championship lead extends to 11 points instead of 1. So they got 10 points back, but that's far from being, you can't be comfortable at all in this World Constructors Championship. 521.5 points, 510.5 points. Red Bull, of course, trailing by 11 points to Mercedes. Then Scuderia Ferrari in third. Ferrari with 287.5 points. They are actually going further ahead right now than McLaren Mercedes, where McLaren is starting to struggle again with those double points races. 256 points is where they sit, 1 point higher than they were from the Mexican Grand Prix last week. 5th place, Alpine Renault. Double points race certainly helping them, but they are tied with AlphaTauri Honda. Yuki Tsunoda better be helping out now, or otherwise, they might lose that 5th place spot in the World Constructors Championship, because you need more than just Pierre Gasly to get the job done in this fight. 7th place, I expected at least triple-digit points by the end of the World Championship for Aston Martin Mercedes, and I hardly doubt that's probably going to happen. That's probably not going to happen anyways. Points for them has been like, I don't know, trying to teach a fish to breathe there. It's not going to happen right now. 8th place, Williams Mercedes. They have not gained any points since their incredible summer stretch months ago. 23 points they sit at. 9th place, Alfa Romeo Racing Ferrari at 11 points. And with a big fat 0 in 10th is Haas Ferrari. You don't need to know any more than that. You already know what their deal is. Wow. I mean, I look back at yesterday's race and I keep saying like almost like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 times this year that this is the best race of the year. This is the best race of the year. This is the best Grand Prix of the year. And I feel like it's only going to get crazier and more unpredictable within these next 3 races.
Man, y'all better. I'm just letting y'all know right now that the next 3 races, y'all better be ready. Get your popcorn for this, because this is going to be an absolute dogfight to the end in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, yeah. It's going to feel a lot like 2010. It's going to feel a lot like 2016. Remember when Nico Rosberg was in the Mercedes camp and it came down between teammates there. I'm just beyond ready. This might be Brazil 2008, maybe better. Fantastic stuff. All right, let's continue on and move into the discussion of Australia's flagship series, the V8 Supercars Championship. Remember, they have a 4-week trek in Sydney Motorsport Park because of their country situation in terms of getting back to completing making a completed season. 4 consecutive race weekends at Sydney. This is Sydney Week 3 Super Sprint format. And I'm very impressed with Anton de Pasquale. He has been putting on an absolute show since they returned to action this fall. Let's go through the races one by one. We're going to start off with race 1. I'm just pulling up the numbers and racing reference. Race 1 was on Saturday. Race 2 and race 3 were on Sunday. I say that, I mean Saturday in Australia and the 2 races on Sunday in Australia for 2 and 3. These were rounds 26, 27, and 28 of 31 rounds total for this year, and week 10 of 12 for the 12 weekends that comprise the 31 rounds. So let's get into race 1. Of course, on Saturday, Anton de Pasquale, he's done it before. He did it again. He led 29 of the 32 laps, picked up his 9th career pole, 6th career win, and his 12th career podium. Made that look very easy, but was just under 2 seconds ahead of Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen, the championship leader, tried to retain that lead, try to keep that lead as high as it has been leading up to the stoppage, and he's doing very well for himself, leading 2 laps in the race. Van Gisbergen started 14th, his 137th career podium. 3rd place, another impressive drive by Will Brown. We're going to talk about him in race 3. He's very, very talented.
Oh, yeah. What a drive for Will Brown, man. I got to give it to him. And, you know, as much as I would say, you know, he just got his first win, I think he's got something to prove. You know, as far as, what was it, race 3?
Yeah, he won race 3.
Yeah.
Put a beautiful performance out there.
And let's not forget about that little battle between the 2 teammates from Triple Eight Racing.
That was amazing. Seeing Cup and Van Gisbergen trading blows like that. Wow. Yeah. But let's continue on in race 1 here. 4th place in race 1 was Jamie Whincup. He started way back. Or actually, no, he started 2nd a minute, not 20th. I read that wrong. 5th place, Brody Kostecki, who started in 7th. 6th place, Scott Pye, started 13th. 7th place, Will Davison, who started 3rd. Boy, Will Davison is still knocking on the door for his first win since the 2016 Bathurst 1000, and he's getting closer and closer by the minute. Hey, you get used to this track by racing there for what? I can't do 3, 6, 9. For 11 races straight, they've been racing, or they're going to be racing at Sydney Motorsport Park for 11 races straight. You're going to get used to this track, and of course, he's been racing plenty times before. I think he might be one of the drivers to stand on top of the podium this weekend. But that's for another discussion. How about Zane Goddard getting his a nice run of 8th place? Zane Goddard started 8th as well. 9th place, Tim Slade. Very impressive drive by Tim Slade, who started 16th, and Andre Heimgartner rounded out the top 10. Bryce Fullwood, unfortunately, had a retirement, finishing in 24th, but he did a lead lap. He actually led a lap and started in 12th. But yeah, not a good race for the Waukesha United driver. Let's move on into race 2. So race 2, of course, was early into Sunday, and just like it was on Saturday, Anton de Pasquale drives the Dick Johnson Racing Ford from the pole to the win, leading 26 of the 32 laps with a gap of 6 seconds. A nice margin of victory. De Pasquale picked up his 10th career pole and his 7th career win and his 13th podium. Very good. I can't wait to see when next year when we get a new clean sheet of paper, see what happens next year and where Anton de Pasquale performs, because it is certainly looking very bright for the young driver. Second place, Jamie Whincup, and he had to hold off the Triple Eight guys, just like we're about to talk about for race 3. Jamie Whincup started in 3rd. He led for 2 laps, finished 2nd, his 265th career podium, right ahead of his teammate Shane McGeesbergen, who led for 4 laps and got his 138th career podium. Chaz Mostert in 4th, Will Davison 5th. Will Davison started 2nd. He's been knocking on the door for a pole position for the last several races. 6th place, Frosty, Mark Winterbottom started 6th too. 7th place, Nick Percat. 8th place, Will Brown. 9th place, Brody Kostecki and Bryce Fullwood recovered from retirement in race 1 to finish in the top 10. Now we're going to talk about race 3. Race 3 was definitely the kicker of the weekend thus far. Will Brown, in rainy conditions and unusual circumstances, Will Brown led 11 of the 32 laps, had a great pit strategy, unlike what happened in last week's I think it was race 2 last week at Sydney, for Sydney week 2 in race 2, or either race 1 or 2, one of the races last week. He had the pole, very much had the race to win, and then the crew screwed up. But hey, they made the right calls. They put him out with a nice margin, and I guess the Triple Eight guys and Roland Dane was probably furious watching this at home in Queensland, but the Triple Eight guys, I guess they were just too full of themselves and let the win slip away. I love them, but you gotta admit they weren't looking at the end goal as much as they were looking at each other's Holdens. That was great. His first career win, 4th time on the podium. It was just a matter of time. 23 years of age. He's been successful in single-seater racing domestically. Very talented driver. This is his first year as a full-time driver as well. And I think we're going to see a lot from him in the future. Jarvis Motorsport may not be the premier Holden team, but they do have good cars when good drivers are behind the wheel. And that speaks volumes, especially considering Brody Kostecki's performances in the other Jarvis car as well. So it's only going to get good from here, especially come time for the Bathurst 1000, which is in 3/4 of a month from now. Second place, Jamie Whincup. Probably needed an extra few laps. Probably needed to let go of Shane McGeesbergen. They both would have had faster laps. Clearly, the fastest lap, actually was Tim Slade. Whoops. Got to remember the wet weather at the end prevented anybody from getting faster laps than they had at the start of the race. Whincup led for 15 laps, brought home his 266th career podium, while Shane McGeesbergen got his 139th career podium after leading 4 laps and starting 2nd in the race. And by the way, for Jamie Whincup, he won his 88th career pole in the process to the 2nd place finish he had. So yeah, good run for Triple Eight, but they should have had at least one of their drivers on the top step of the podium. 4th place, Nick Percat in the Brad Jones Racing Holden. Give them credit, Nick Percat Anton Hazelwood, 4th and 5th. In 6th place, another Holden, Scott Pye for Team 18 DeWalt Racing Holden. Great run for the Commodores, and I know the Commodores may not be around for long, but it's always a pleasure to see them out in front, especially in their waning years. Let's continue on with the results. For race 3 at Sydney 3, Cam Waters was the highest Ford in 7th, followed by another Holden of Chaz Mostert in 8th, ironically the former Tickford driver, finishing behind the Tickford Ford. Anton de Pasquale finished 9th, and Jack LeBrock rounded out the top 10 in his Tickford Racing Ford. Other leaders include Tim Slade, who started 18th, led 2 laps, and finished 20th. By the way, here's a fun fact. All 24 cars finished on the same lap as the winner of the race did. So it showed you how competitive the Supercars Championship really is. All right, let's pull up championship points. After 28 races and 10 weeks of competition, the Drivers' Championship is in the hands of Shane Van Gisbergen with a nice lead over Jamie Whincup. That's 337 points and counting. He's in good territory. Most likely will have to clinch the championship at the very end. Hopefully that won't be the case. No driver wants to go into the final race, especially for this year, again, being the Bathurst 1000, with that in your mind. Jamie Whincup, second, so 26.78 for Van Gisbergen, while Whincup has 23.41 on the points board. Will Davison sits solidly in third with 21.49 points, highest Ford on the board. Chaz Mostert in fourth, 20.83 points, and Cam Waters with 19.64 points in fifth. In the team's championship, after 28 races, it's all Triple Eight Racing Engineering, the Red Bull Empole racing team, the Holden squad, with 5.019 on the points board. Then, of course, Dick Johnson Racing and the Shell V-Power Racing Ford team in second with 41.04. That's a huge margin. I mean, they're in another dimension, Triple Eight. Third place, Tickford Racing in the Ford gang in third with 33.74 points. They have a long way to go to even reach, or think about reaching Dick Johnson Racing. If they can even reach the JR cars, I'd be surprised at all at this point, with only 3 races to spare. Fourth place, Waukesha Andretti United with 33.16 on the points board. They could have a chance to contest for third in the team's championship, but, it takes 2 to make it happen. And fifth place, Jarvis Motorsports, hopping back into the top 5 with 30.92 on the points board. Jarvis Motorsport doing very well right now. 2 races remaining at Sydney. So, of course, we're going to get week 4 of the Sydney Super Sprint, whatever you want to call it. Week 11 to 12 will be rounds 29 and 30 this weekend of 31. There'll be a week off, and then the following week will be the Repco Bathurst 1000 in New South Wales, Mount Panorama Circuit, the famous track, some of the toughest track probably in the world, or at least in that part of the world. Mount Panorama Street Circuit.
Oh man, that's definitely. I don't even know what to say. Truth be told,
open up the country first.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, at least let some of the best drivers in the world in. It's pretty sad when Greg Murphy, what a 4-time winner of the Bathurst 1000, can't even go from New Zealand still with, what's his name, Richie Stanaway, and drive for Gary Rogers Motorsport in this year's race.
That's heartbreaking, man.
Seriously. He probably trained all summer or winter over there to get ready and get in shape. And guess what happens? Can't even
get turned away.
You have to quarantine. You have to sign up for quarantine. You have to be approved, or whatever the process is. I don't know what the system is. It's just, I whatever it is, I want it to stop. I'd like to see some normalcy. I'd like to see an Australian Grand Prix, what we had with the Supercars at Melbourne. But that's for another discussion. This is a racing podcast. So let's move into sports car racing now and bring up a lot of action. Wow. We have to break down this year's Petit Le Mans, multiple Petit Le Mans in Road Atlanta, the 10 hours of Road Atlanta, better known as Petit Le Mans, and a farewell race to many, new dimensions, new chapters, and eras changing. Of course, in sports car racing and endurance racing, we know where the direction is heading towards the future. That is a surprise to nobody as far as what the scope will look like. So, yeah, we have this results.imsa.com. Better have that up. That will be used to pull up the spreadsheets of the points and the race results. So let me pull that up, the provisional points for that and the IMEC, the IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup. Because this was the end of the 12-round IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship that's been around for over half a century of North American sports car racing, as well as the end of the 4-race North American Endurance Cup, better known as this year's branded Michelin Endurance Cup. And let's break it down class by class. The race, we'll talk about the race first, then we'll talk championships afterwards. We'll start with the outright championship and then the endurance championship. So bear with me. My camera's going to be off because I just don't want to deal with bad quality. All right. Winning this year's Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta was the trio of the Mazda drivers in the final race of a factory-supported Mazda prototype, the Mazda RT24-P. Fielded by Multimatic Motorsports, the Canadian team, fielding this Japanese powerhouse car one last time, and they got the job done. Give it up for Oliver Jarvis, Harry Tincknell, and Jonathan Bomarito, winning this year's multiple Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta, completing 410 laps. They exceeded 400 laps this year. Just outstanding stuff. Very much so. Only 4 cars finished on the overall lead lap. It showed you how close it was, or how hard it was to keep up with the powerhouse guys in this year's race. Margin of victory was 3 seconds. And second place went to car 31, number 31, of course, Action Express Racing's Wheel and Engineering Racing entry, the Cadillac DPI of Felipe Nasr, Mike Conway, Pipo Derani. Derani and Nasr win the outright overall championship. That I'll get into in a minute. Third place, though, was number 10, Wayne Taylor Racing's Konica Minolta Acura ARX-05, with Philippe Albuquerque, Alexander Rossi, and, oh my gosh, Ricky Taylor in that final last-ditch effort to get just enough points for the championship, literally off-roading in the last sector.
The last 2 corners.
That was outstanding. Hey, someone should sign up for the Baja 1000 or the World Rally Championship. I don't know. Wayne Taylor may not want to give his son away to that just yet, because he definitely made the right call to put his son out there towards the end. And Ricky Taylor just was shy of it, but congratulations to them, because they did win the 2021 overall IMSA Endurance Championship for this year. Of course, remember, it goes back to Daytona. They won the 24-hour race, and they had such a great consistent average finish where it was all locked up in the end, well before the outright championship was decided throughout the race. Third place, or I was actually third place. Fourth place was the sister car for Action Express Racing, the Alley Cadillac Racing entry, number 48 DPI, the fourth and final car to finish on the lap of the winner, car driven by Kamiya Kobayashi, Jimmy Johnson, and Simon Pagenaud. Really playing kind of team player-ish, because I'm not surprised. You see that they were conservative, but they managed to stay on the lead lap. speaking of Cadillacs, 5th place in the class that finished 5th overall was the number 01 Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac DPI. Ranger van der Zand, Scott Dixon, and Earl Bammer in an impromptu entry. Kevin Magnussen, apparently the Dane was ill, too ill to race, and he had to not race. So Earl Bammer, who's actually slated to drive another Chip Ganassi Cadillac for next year, that is actually announced. It was announced long before the race. He was out there in standby to maybe just watch the race, but you got to put on a fire suit that someone else obtained before him to run this race, and thus he did. Remember, he is an overall Le Mans winner back in Porsche's prototype days. Now we switch over to the Lmp3 class. We will discuss that category. All cars ran the Orca 07 chassis, so that's easy to get out of the way. Finishing 6th overall, the Lmp3 class winner of the Petit Le Mans completed 407 laps. That was number 8 Tower Motorsport by Starworks Orca 07, driven by John Ferrano, Gabriel Albry, and James French. Second place finished physically finished ahead of the 8 car, but was given a time penalty for contact with the 8 car towards the end of the race, was the 52 car, PR1 Matheson Motorsports, Orco 7, Ben Keating, age 50, Mikkel Jensen, and Scott Huffaker. By the way, they did win the 2021 Lmp3 Class Championship in both the outright and the endurance championship. So congratulations to them. They put on a great season. I'm sure being credited the win would have been a little bit better leaving the race, but certainly they did everything they needed to do to bring out a successful season. One lap behind them, third on the class podium, was the number 11 Win Autosport Orca 07. Stephen Thomas, Tristan Nunez, and Thomas Merrill were the drivers for that car. Fourth place in class, the final car to be finishing on the track in the category was the number 22 United Autosports Orca 07. They were actually 2 laps off the class winning lap. Drivers were Jim McGuire, Guy Smith, and Wayne Boyd. Then we move into the Lmp3 class, and yes, they did manage to finish ahead of the LMGTs in the GTM classes swan song race. Lmp3 class went to the 11th place finisher in the overall board. That, of course, was the car that ended up winning the championship. And yes, Gar Robinson, all by himself, won the Drivers' Championship for Lmp3 class. We'll talk about that pretty soon. Felipe Fraga, Scott Andrews were the drivers, the co-drivers on that car. And I just will want to confirm right here that they did win the Endurance Championship. Yes, they did. All 3 of them won the Endurance Championship, likewise to the LMP2 situation. Of course, that car, they drove a Ligier JSP320, completing 391 laps, 1 lap ahead of the second place car in class, which was the number 30 JR3 Racing Ligier JSP320. That car was driven by Ari Below, Garrett Grist, and Spencer Piggott. Ironically, Spencer was driving, I think he was driving with Riley Motorsports when they won in class at Daytona earlier this year in the 24-hour race. Third place in class, finished 16th overall. That was car number 91. Riley Motorsports, Ligier, just P320. Jorlin Bleekemolen, the Dutch veteran, Jim Cox, Dylan Murray, 2 younger American drivers were behind the wheel of that car, completing 387 laps. Fourth place in class was the number 40 Fast MD Racing, the Duquesne M30D08, highest Duquesne LMP3 in the class. Drivers were Todd Archer, Max Henrati, and James Vance. And fifth place in the category was the number 47 Motorsports Duquesne M30D08 with Mark Vame, Steven Radzinski, and Rodrigo Flucker from Peru. Now we move on to the GT categories, and of course, as we all know, this was the final race for the GTLM class for LMGTE's racing in North America's premier sports car series of IMSA. And unfortunately, but fortunately at the same time, we got ourselves a good race in the GTLM class finale. That class was won by the 13th place finisher overall, number 79, and the sister car actually finished in second, number 97. Proton Competition, better known as WeatherTech Racing's subdivision of Proton Competition, number 79 Porsche 911 RSR 19, completed 390 laps with drivers Cooper McNeil, then the Porsche factory drivers of Matthew Jaminet and Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell, you'll be seeing him in Bathurst in half a month time. Matthew Jaminet, who put on a stellar year in all the Porsches he's driven this season of sports car racing on a global scale and in a regional scale. Second place was the number 97 WeatherTech Racing Proton Competition Porsche 911 RSR 19, completing 390 laps as well. Just the two cars that finished on the same lap for the class were the two WeatherTech Porsches, Michael Christensen, Kevin Estrit, and Frederick Makovicki, all Porsche factory drivers, to say the least. They all had a good shot at winning this category. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see some of the better known cars have a say in it towards the end because of on-track incidents and stuff. Third place on the class podium was the number 24 BMW Team RLL, the Rahal Letterman Lanigan fielded BMW M8 GTE. By the way, this will be the last race ever, as far as I'm aware, for the BMW M8 GTE that debuted in 2018. Of course, everybody laughs at the meme of the big BMW M8 meme because the car was so tall in relation to the other cars in the category, which made it, for a funny meme, especially the picture of the car going through the Dunlop Bridge or being taller than the Dunlop Bridge in the 24 Hours from Le Mans from 2018. It was kind of funny at the time. But, it was a very interesting car, very heavy in weight, interesting to watch perform on the racetrack. And at least we get to see RLL race full-time next year under GT3 regulations for the GT Pro category. That's for another discussion. Fourth place in class for GTLM was the Endurance Champions for 2021, the number 4 Corvette Racing Chevrolet Corvette C8R, driven by Alexander Sims, Nick Tandy, and Tommy Milner. The Tandy and Milner pair get credit for the Endurance Championship for the class. Alexander Sims drove a select few races in relation to the full-time Corvette drivers. And in fifth place in the class was the number 25 BMW Team RLL. They actually were caught up in an accident on lap 281. The factory drivers, Cardi Felipe, Philip Eng, and Bruno Spangler were behind the wheel of that car. And I will mention, just a shout out to the sixth place car winning the outright GTLM class championship was the number 3 Corvette Racing Chevrolet Corvette C8R. Unfortunately, they were taken out on lap 150 with an accident, where Jordan Taylor was behind the wheel. Wrong place, wrong time. Congratulations to Jordan Taylor, Antonio Garcia, and the other driver in that car was Nicky Katzberg. And last but not least, the final race for a sole GT3 class in IMSA is the GT Daytona class, GTD. The drivers that won the class were the drivers who won the Sprint Cup Championship. Of course, the championship that only goes through the sprint races, contested in the GTD class, completing 378 laps. Only 2 cars finish on the same lap together. Was the number 23, Heart of Racing Team, Aston Martin Vantage, AMR GT3, completing 378 laps, finishing 19th overall, taking the class win. Roman DeAngelis, Ross Gunn, and Ian James were behind the wheel of that car. A nice factory-supported driver lineup for that vehicle. Second place in the class was the number 9. Give a call to these guys. They win the championship, the outright GTD class championship from Greater Toronto area, Canada. FAF Motorsports put together a very interesting effort because they had to miss a few races this year, and they still won the outright championship. The drivers, of course, being Lawrence Vantor and Zachary Robicon. They ran all the races that they entered in their championship-winning season, and Lars Kern, a Porsche factory driver from Germany, was in the car as well. Great to see Lawrence Vantor shining in the United States, especially after the factory Porsche team shut down last year. Maybe they'll open up back up again, considering the fact that there's GTD Pro. Who knows? Less costly. Third place was the number 12, Vassar Sullivan Racing Lexus RCF GT3. That Toyota-powered car was one lap off the other two cars that finished on the class podium, but still it's a good effort on their part. Robert McGinnis, Frankie Montecalvo, and Zach Veach, the American trio, did a very good job in that car. Fourth place was the number 28, Allegra Motorsports Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo with Michael De Quesada, who I believe is the owner-driver of that car. Daniel Huncadella and Daniel Morad. Huncadella, of course, being a Mercedes factory driver in the process. And fifth place in class, congratulations to this trio. And how fitting it is that we got to see these veterans get it done. Trent Hinman, Jan Halen, and Patrick Long, and perhaps one of Patrick Long's last races in his career. He said his full-time driving career is over after the conclusion of Saturday's Petit Le Mans. And Patrick Long, who, ironically, like his last name says, spent a very long career driving Porsches under a factory contract, the only American to have such a contract from Porsche in its time as a sports car powerhouse. Patrick Long wins the GTD Class Endurance Championship with Jan Halen and Trent Hinman by finishing 5th in the race, completing 376 laps. So that's the race results. And now we're going to go through the final championship standings after 12 races of the 2021 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Let's go through the final standings one by one. We're going to go through the outright championship first, and then the top 5 in each class, and then we'll go into the endurance championship as that 4-race cup came to a close as well. Winning the overall and DPI class drivers championship was, as you see on the screen, number 31, the Whelan Engineering Cadillac, fielded by Action Express Racing and drivers, the 2 Brazilian drivers, veterans in single-seater racing. Just two of the fastest drivers I've seen thus far in a long time. Luis Felipe Nazar and Luis Felipe Durrani, better known as Pipo Durrani, with 34.07 points. They put on a great run in that Cadillac, fielded by Action Express Racing, to win this championship. While in second place, not that far back, was the duo of Felipe Albuquerque and Ricky Taylor, driving, of course, for Wayne Taylor Racing. We're going to go through the Drivers' Championship, and then we'll talk about the teams in a minute. Third place, Harry Tincknell and Oliver Jarvis, the British duo for Mazda. Fourth place all by himself was Ranger van der Zand, and fifth place by himself was Dane Cameron. Now, let's go through the top 5 in the outright championship as the season is all over. Number 31, Whelen Engineering Racing Cadillac DPI, winning the championship, as I mentioned, with 34.07 points. Second place was number 10, Konica Minolta Acura ARX 05, fielded by Wayne Taylor Racing, with 33.96 points. Third place was number 55 in their Farewell Tour, Multimatic Motorsports, fielding the Mazda Motorsports car, 32.64 points. Fourth place was the number 01 Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac DPI with 31.63 points. And fifth place was the number 60 Meyershank Racing with Curb Agajanian Acura ARX 05 with 29.46 points. Very good stuff all year long. That category, when it goes into LMDH, it's going to be something to watch. I can't wait for 2023. And in the Manufacturers Championship, Cadillac wins that with 36.66 points. Second place, Acura with 35.53 points, and Mazda with the sole 55 car in third with 32.21 points. Now we move on to the LMP2 Drivers Championship after the outright championship came to a close. That was the duo of American 50-year-old veteran Ben Keating and very experienced Danish driver Mikkel Jensen for PR1 Matheson Motorsports and Orca, taking the championship home with 21.62 points. Stephen Thomas and Tristan Nunez with 20.26 points. Third place, Gabriel Aubry and John Ferrano with 20.12 points. Fourth place, the duo of Dwight Merriman and Ryan Dalziel at 16.20 points. And fifth place by himself, Scott Huffaker with 1,057 points. Now we move into the final championship for the LMP2 teams. Of course, that goes to PR1 Matheson Motorsports, Orca 07. All cars listed here are Orca 07s. 21.62 points. Second place is number 11, Wood Autosports with 20.26 points. Third place, number 8, Tower Motorsport by Starworks, 20.12 points. Fourth place, number 18, Aero Motorsport, 16.20 points. And fifth place, the number 22, United Autosports, Orca 07, that spent the year racing full time in the World Endurance Championship and European Le Mans Series, picked up 920 points in the races they ran here in the States. Now we move into the brand new class that was added this year for the first time as part of the main staple WeatherTech Championship, being LMP3. So the LMP3 Class Championship final standings after the outright season came to a close. All by himself, give it up to Gar Robinson, bringing it home with the championship. The American driver gets it done with 21.76 points. Second place is the Core Autosport duo of Jonathan Bennett and his driver Colin Brown with 1990 points. Third place, Jim Cox and Dylan Murray, 1922 points. Fourth place by himself, Felipe Fraga, 1846 points, and Rasmus Lind by himself in fifth with 1790 points. Final standings, of course, in the teams championship for the LMP3 class. Number 74, Riley Motorsports Ligier, just P320. All cars are Ligiers with in the top 5 here in team. So all cars that I'm about to list are Ligier, just P320 chassis. 21.76 points for the number 74 Riley Motorsports car. 54 points in second place for the Core Autosport car, 1990 points. And third place, the sister car to the championship winning team, Riley Motorsport number 91 car, 1922 points. Fourth place, the number 38 Performance Tech Motorsports at 1790 points. And fifth place, the number 36 Andretti Autosport car with 1432 points amongst the races that they ran in the season. Now in the GTLM class, for one last time, the final standings in the Drivers' Championship. With it all set and done, it's the Corvette racing duo of Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor with 35.49 points, taking it home. Second place, the sister Corvette drivers from car number 4, Nick Tandy and Tommy Milner with 34.48 points. Cooper McNeil was the only driver to drive the number 79 Porsche all races all year long from start to finish. He has 3356 points. Matt Campbell, another Porsche driver, fourth with 2084 points, and another Porsche driver, Matthew Jaminet, in fifth with 1706 on the points board. And then as far as GTLM teams are concerned, the final standings for that class is number 3, Corvette Racing, Chevrolet Corvette C8R with 3549 points, winning the championship with ease. Second place is number 4, Corvette Racing, Chevrolet Corvette C8R, 3448 points, the sister car coming up in second. Third place was the number 79, WeatherTech Racing Proton Competition Porsche, 911 RSR19, 3356 points. And then the BMW is fielded by Ray Holderman Lanigan Racing, the Team RLL BMW M8 GTEs. Car 24 picked up 1336 points, while in fifth place, Car 25 picked up 1251 points. Final standings for the GTLM Class Manufacturers Championship. After 12 races in the books, Chevrolet wins that with ease in their Corvette brand with 3715 points, while Porsche in second with 3546 points. BMW only running the endurance races picked up 1407 points, and Ferrari only running the Daytona 24-hour race earned 330 points from that sole effort. And then we move into the GTD class for the final standings. And the championship over there goes to the Pfaff Motorsports Porsche duo of Zachary Robicon and Lawrence Vantor with 3284 points. They win the championship. Then the Lamborghini duo from Paul Miller Racing. By the way, they just announced this morning that they're ending partnership with Lamborghini. I'm pretty shocked to hear. Brian Sellers and Madison Snow with 3163 points. The Sprint Cup championship winning team, the team that won the championship throughout the sprint races, that honor went to them, of course, but they got the outright championship in third place. Heart of Racing team, Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3, that 23 car that did so well in the sprint races, driven by Roman DeAngelis and Ross Gunn. Fourth place all by himself, Patrick Leong with 2943 points. And then Bill Oberlin and Robbie Foley, which it looked like they had the upper hand in the GTD class outright championship for most of the races, had a bad stretch in the final 3 races in the sprint championship, which did him pretty bad in the outright title hunt as well. The number 96 Turret Motorsport BMW M6 GT3. By the way, that car will be changing. They'll be in an M4 GT3 for next year. Top 5 in the finals teams championship. Standings for GT class teams. As I mentioned, number 9, Pfaff Motorsports Porsche. 911 GT3R, 3284 points. The number 1, Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo finished second with 3163 points. Number 23, Heart of Racing team, Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3 with 3111 on the points board. Fourth place was the Endurance Cup Championship winning team, number 16, Wright Motorsports Porsche 911 GT3R with 2943 points. And fifth place was number 96, Turner Motorsport BMW M6 GT3 with 2880 points. And likewise to the other GT class, this category also had a manufacturer championship. Of course, 10 manufacturers total, because obviously this is a GT3 class. Porsche wins this with 3425 points that they claimed throughout the year to win the manufacturer's GTD class title. Second place was the Lamborghini brand, of course, 3290 points on their end for the Italian brand. Third place, the British brand of Aston Martin, 3239 points. Lexus came home fourth with 3129 points, and BMW in fifth with 3089 points. Most of the time they were in just with one car throughout the year. Acura with the NSX GT3 finished sixth on their efforts. Acura with 2747 points. Audi in seventh. They didn't run all the races, so they had 2487 points. Mercedes-AMG did run all the races, but it just had poor luck since the Daytona 24-hour class win that was won by Windward Racing. So they get 2,300 points. Ferrari in ninth with 526 points, and McLaren with just 243 points. I assume their only race they ran was the Petit Le Mans race. Interesting. And with that said, that race on Saturday also marked the end of the 4-race IMSA Endurance Championship, better known as the IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup for sponsorship reasons. That went to the team that started very strong, the Daytona 24-hour champion team, of course, that being of Wayne Taylor Racing. Congratulations to the trio. So the trio of the outright winners of the IMSA Endurance Cup Championship for 2021 went to Ricky Taylor, Philippe Albuquerque, and Alexander Rossi with 45 points. In second place was the trio of Harry Tincknell, Jonathan Bomarito, and Oliver Jarvis, the trio that won the Petit Le Mans race with Mazda on Saturday, 39 points. In fact, that was decided long before the race came to a close. The championship was already clinched with hours to spare. Third place, by himself, Dane Cameron with 34 points. Fourth place, Pipo Durrani, Mike Conway, and Felipe Nasr with 32 points. As fifth place, the Sebring 12-hour trio of Loic Duval, Sebastian Bourdais, and fellow countryman Tristan Vautier from JC Miller Motorsports, 32 points as well. Final standings for the DPI Teams Championship in the Endurance Championship was the number 10, Konica Minolta Acura ARX-05, fielded by Wayne Taylor Racing, 45 points. Number 55, Multimatic Motorsports Mazda, 39 points. Third place, number 60, Meyershank Racing with Kirk Agajanian. Acura ARX-05, 34 points. And fourth and fifth are tied with 32 points. Gaining the nod on the tiebreaker was the number 31, the outright championship team, Whelen Engineering Racing, fielded by Action Express Racing, the Cadillac DPI. And fifth place, the number 5, Mustang Sampling with JDC Miller Motorsports Racing, Cadillac DPI. Fifth in the final standings for the Endurance Championship. Final standings in the Manufacturers Championship after the 4 Endurance Cup races went to Acura with 51 points, just 3 points over Cadillac. Cadillac had a good charge towards the end, but it just wasn't enough. 48 points to Cadillac, 45 points to that sole Mazda that ran. Hard to believe only one car could keep up with the other manufacturers too, not just with the teams. Now we move on to the Lmp3 Class final standings for the Endurance Championship after the 4 races concluded on Saturday night. It was given to the car and 2 of the 3 drivers that won the outright championship as well in LMP2. That, of course, being Ben Keating and Mikkel Jensen and Scott Huffaker. 45 points on the board. They win the championship, the drivers, for the Endurance Cup. Second place went to Gabriel Aubry and John Ferrano, 42 points for them. Third place went to Stephen Thomas, Thomas Merrill, Tristan Nunez, 37 points. Fourth place went to Dwight Merriman and Kyle Tilley, as well as Ryan Dazil. Those were the Aero Motorsport drivers. 34 points for them. And fifth place by himself was Tim Bure with just 26 points. Now, the LMP2 Class Championship final standings, the top 5 for the LMP2 Endurance Cup Championship went, of course, it was a 3-point difference between first and second, but it went to PR1 Matheson Motorsports, number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports, Oracle 7, 45 points for them. Second place, number 8, Tower Motorsport by Starworks, Oracle 7, 42 points. Third place, number 11, Win Autosports, Oracle 7, 37 points. Fourth place, number 18, Aero Motorsport, Oracle 7, the car that won the 24-hour race at Daytona earlier this year. That car picked up 34 points in fourth, and fifth place with 18 points was the number 22 United Autosports, Oracle 07. Now we move into the inaugural, the new class championship, of course, being in Lmp3 class, going to Gar Robinson, the American, and Scott Andrews taking that honor as well. A very good effort for the Australian and the American drivers to win the championship for the Endurance Cup and LMP3, the Riley Motorsport Ligier drivers. 55 points each on their part. Spencer Pickett by himself finished second with 44 points. Third place by himself was Oliver Askew, 39 points. Fourth place, the trio from the sister car at Riley Motorsports, Jim Cox, Dylan Murray, and Jorlin Blinkenbolen, 33 points. And then fifth place in this category for the Drivers' Championship was the trio from Core Autosport, Colin Brown, Jonathan Bennett, and George Kurtz at 31 points. Final standings for LMP3 in the Teams Championship. Number 74, Riley Motorsports dominated this one. They actually earned the championship way before the race ended. Hours ago, 12 or 6 hours before the race ended, over their sister car, Chris Riley Motorsports Ligier JSP320 at 55 points over the number 91 Riley Motorsports Ligier JSP320, 33 points. That's a huge gap considering the Endurance Championship being only 4 races. Third place was number 54 Car Autosport Ligier JSP320 at 31 points. Fourth place was number 38 Performance Tech Motorsports Ligier JSP320 at 27 points. And fifth place was the number 7 47 Motorsports Duquesne M30D08 at 23 points, the highest of the Duquesne chassis entrants from this year's LMP3 class and in the Endurance Championship. Now we move on into the GT sides, and one last time, the final ever standings for the GTLM class era in the Drivers' Championship. That goes, of course, to Nick Tandy and Tommy Milner, the drivers of the number 4 Corvette Racing Chevrolet Corvette CR at 44 points. A 4-point gap over the sister Corvette that won the outright championship of Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor. To think what could have happened towards the end of the race should the 3 car not been involved in someone else's problems in that crash towards the end of the race, who would have known? Third place by himself was Alexander Sims, another Corvette driver who didn't run all the races, but he got himself 37 points for his efforts. Fourth place, Cooper McNeil, the lone WeatherTech Porsche driver to run all the races, got 35 points. And fifth place, Jesse Krohn from the BMW Team RLL Staple at 35 points. Now we move on into the Teams Championship for the final standings for the Endurance Cup and GT Le Mans class. That was won by the number 4 Corvette Racing Corvette CR, 44 points, 4 points over the 3 Corvette that had to retire throughout the closing hours of the race at 40 points. That was all was available. Third place was the number 79 WeatherTech Racing Porsche 911 RSR 19. In fact, they won a tiebreaker over fourth place and fifth place, the 2 BMWs over the 24 BMW Team RLL, BMW M8GTE, and the sister car, Car 25. All those 3 drivers, or not drivers, all those 3 cars earned 35 points. Then, as far as the final manufacturers' championship standings look like, Chevrolet won that not by much, as people would think they would win. Of course, considering that BMW ran only the endurance races, they got 49 points out of their efforts, 4 points behind Chevrolet. Third place was Porsche. Very up and down year in terms of the Endurance Cup, and Ferrari with 12 points only running the 24-hour race at Daytona. So they get 12 points from their efforts. One more class, and then we'll move on to MotoGP. I have to talk about that, but we'll get to this. One more category for the Endurance Cup Championship for the GT Daytona class. Of course, the final year of the Gt3 class being in one division. Next year, they'll split up in Pro and I think Pro-Am or Am for next year in replacement of GTLM's class. Final standings after the 4 endurance races this year, it went to Jan Halen from Belgium, Trent Hinman and Patrick Long from the States. And Patrick Long, of course, how about finishing out a full-time career with the championship? That's pretty cool. 40 points that they've earned for the Wright Motorsports Porsche. We'll talk about the teams in a minute. Second place was the outright championship car from Pfaff Motorsports with 38 points. It was a 2-point gap at the end. It was very close in the Endurance Championship. But they did beat out the fellow Porsche car of Pfaff Motorsports, driven by Lars Kern, Lawrence Vantor, and Zachary Robicon. Third place was the Sprint Championship trio, or should I say duo? But of course, it's a trio with the Endurance Cup of harder racing teams. Aston Martin drivers of Ian James, Roman DeAngelis, and Ross Gunn, 34 points. Fourth place, Brian Sellers, Corey Lewis, Madsen Snow from the Palomino Racing Lamborghini stable. Fifth place went to Mauro Engel, who was just by himself driving for various Mercedes teams throughout the year. Then we go look at the final standings for the teams championship. We'll look at the top 5 and see how that looked after the 4-race endurance championship. Wright Motorsports Porsche win by 2 races. Number 16, Wright Motorsports Porsche 911 GT3R. 2 points behind was another Porsche from a different team. Number 9, Pfaff Motorsports Porsche 911 GT3R, the team that won the outright championship this year, was 2 points shy of winning the Endurance Cup as well. And then, of course, the team that won, how fittingly, all the championship winning teams finishing first, second, and third in this category of the championship. The Heart of Racing team, Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3 car 23. That car got 34 points for its effort. So the top 3 were 8 points apart. That was a pretty interesting showing for the year. Actually, 6 points apart. Sorry. Fourth place was number 1, Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo at 33 points. And fifth place was the number 96 Turner Motorsport BMW M6 GT3 at 27 points. All right, we're finally here at the end of this one because it seems to take longer to list all the championships standings at the end of these IMSA races, especially at the very end of the year. But the final standings for the IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup GT Daytona Manufacturers Championship, a 10-point margin of victory for Porsche. They win it with 48 points. Aston Martin in second with 38 points. Third place, Lamborghini with 34 points. Fourth place went to Mercedes-AMG, the manufacturer that won in its class, the GTD class for the Rolex 24 at Daytona this year. They got 33 points. And fifth place went to Lexus with 29 points throughout the year. So that's where it stood. I'd say that the 4-race Endurance Cup was pretty good this year. I think the 12-race championship was just outstanding. Very fun to follow, but you have to watch all the races. If you miss out on the IMSA race, you probably miss out on something that affects the season greatly. Great stuff to close out the year for America's highest level of sports car racing. Now, we get to move on and talk about what's next in sports car racing. That might be for some more discussions in the future. As far as other endurance championships are concerned, or sports car events, they're down the horizon. Of course, this week we have the 24 Hours of Sebring, which I will be there. It's going to be pretty fun to watch from the point of view of myself. And, of course, at the start of December, we'll have the 9 Hours of Kyalami to close out the 2021 International or Intercontinental GT Challenge. That the IGTC, of course, only reduced to 3 races this year because of the removal of the Bathurst 12 hours, which luckily has a scheduled date for next year. So that's great. They never even got one for this year. So let's hope it follows through. Now it's a Kyalami in South Africa. That's next one. But yeah, I'm telling you what, the fact that the championship came down to one pass at the end, at the very end, Ricky Taylor, I knew he was going to be committed and take no BS from anything. But the move failed, and even if it worked, he probably would have been given a time penalty for cutting the track. So take it as you will. That was some good stuff. Now we move on and talk about one more championship that came to a close this weekend. And of course, we're talking 2 wheels, and that was the Valencian Community Grand Prix at Circuit Ricardo Tormo, the beautiful circuit in Valencia that closed the year's MotoGP World Championship. The Grand Prix Motorcycling Championship is all done. hard to believe. That year felt like a long one, but 18 races, I mean, it kind of went by quick, but you have to consider how fast these championships really are. All things must come to an end. And what happened this year, of course, is no exception. And it was very good to watch. So that farewell, honestly, to Valentino Rossi was very emotional. Honestly, he's someone that we could all relate to watching. This guy has been in the sport for so long. 42 years old. He turned professional in 1996. Yeah, running in what was then the 125cc championship, and immediately winning the very next year, and then winning the 250cc world championship and winning in 1999. Took 2 years, and then, as we all know, in the top class of motorcycling Grand Prix racing on the world stage, the Urbino, Italy native, in just his second year in his career, won the world championship in 2001. And to believe that it happened so fast, in the way that Valentino Rossi did, the way he did, and to follow up four more championships in a row, 03, 04, 05. I mean, come on, I was in kindergarten, and they were talking about Valentino Rossi, and to think that he would have a career like this long, and here I am, 23 years old, and he calls it quits. Little Valentino no more. He is retired and hung his helmet, and did so in such a professional fashion. The era of him racing with Casey Stoner, one of Australia's best of all time, of course, winning those 2 world championships and getting himself 38 wins, and Jorge Lorenzo, Spaniard, who was in the sport for about 10 years, actually retired 2 years ago, got himself just under 50 race wins in the Premier Class. But to see Valentino Rossi being able to retire in his own terms is always a special sight to see, because we know in motorsports it's not as common. There's no promises that you get to determine the the final curtain call of your career. And he's just such a humble personality and just a great person. On and off the track. I mean, he was the best of the 2000s. And with the manufacturers that he's driven for, like Honda, Yamaha, and of course he came back to Yamaha. He spent those years at Ducati. It just didn't work out for him. And you know what? He became an elder statesman in motorcycling racing. So, yeah, that's all. Let's get into the race, though. And that was really the tone of the race weekend, was just how many times you could say, you can never say thank you so much to a rider like Valentino Rossi. Let's talk about the race. How about Francesco Bagnaya, or the man they call Pecco? Pecco Bagnaya, who is 24 years old, from Turin, Italy. Pecco Bagnaya took a long time in his 3 years with Ducati to get that first win. And once he got that first win, he never looked back. He's now a 4-time winner in MotoGP, Grand Prix, top level Premier Class racing, from the fastest lap and second off the grid. Great run for Bagnaya, and I can't wait to see how he races next year in that Ducati bike come 2022, because he might just be making this World Championship very evenly matched. Second place went to Jorge Martin, and what more can I say about Jorge Martin and the Ducati rider from Pramac Racing, the customer Ducati team, the team that was been in the sport for 20 years, almost 20 years, and never won a Premier Class Grand Prix until Jorge Martin came in and started putting poles and fastest laps and wins. He has outperformed his bikes. That is a great rider. I can't wait to see what happens in Jorge Martin's career in the future. Third place, Jack Miller, makes it a Ducati manufacturer sweep of 1, 2, 3. The top 3 were less than a second apart. Shows you how close the racing was. And with that, Ducati Lenovo team win the 2021 MotoGP World Teams Championship. Of course, the World Drivers Championship or the World Riders Championship, excuse me, this is bikes, was already clinched 3 races ago with with Fabio Quartararo. And Ducati, they win the teams and the Constructors Championship. The factory team wins the team championship, and the constructor as a whole wins the Constructors Championship. But the Riders Championship, okay, fourth place was Suzuki's Jan Mir. Fifth place was the Riders champion of Fabio Quartararo, a world champion from France. First ever Premier Class world champion rider from France to do it, by the way. It took that long. He finished ahead of his rival and countrymate Johann Zarco, who had a good early season run. Not to say that he picked up towards the end. Brad Binder in the highest KTM in 7th, and Bastianini in 8th. Alex Espargaro in 9th in the highest Aprilia, and 10th place, of course, the man of the weekend. Farewell, Valentino Rossi. The doctor hung up his suit. The appointments are over, and Valentino Rossi has retired in style with 6 points to grab at the end of his outstanding career. Franco Morbidelli finished 11th in his Yamaha, as did the other Yamaha rider of Andrea Dovizioso. Alex Marquez in 13th is actually the highest Honda finisher of the race. Of course, his brother Marc Marquez missed the last 2 races due to concussion-like symptoms. And of course, as you know, Marc Marquez had been struggling with injuries in the past 2 years. Miguel Oliveira recovers to get 14th in his efforts, and Akira Luciona follows suit to get the 15th and final points paying position, getting that final point in KTM. Now we move on and talk about the final standings for this year's MotoGP World Championship, the World Championship of Motorcycle Racing. And as, of course, we know, Fabio Quartararo wins the Yamaha rider riding for Monster Energy Yamaha MotoGP, win the championship, the Riders Championship. 278 points were the final points. Second place was Francesco Bagnaya with 252 points. I can't wait to see how these two go hand in hand next year. Or should I say neck and neck next year. Third place, Joan Mir, highest Suzuki, with 208 points. Jack Miller in 4th with 181 points. And 5th place, Johann Zarco with 173 points. Running up the top 5. Let's go down the list. Marc Marquez, despite missing the first 2 and the last 2 races, finishes, or Brad Binder in 6th, I meant. Marc Marquez in 7th, I meant to say. Alex Espargaro 8th. Jorge Martin in 9th. And Maverick Vinales, who had a run in 2 different manufacturers, and of course with the personal side of his life being so unfortunate with the tragic passing of his young cousin, Dean Bertha Vinales, on the track a good month ago. He brings it home in 10th. And Aprilia should be proud of his efforts. That's your top 10 in the final Riders World Championship standings. Now, the World Constructors Championship standings, of course, the six manufacturers, of course, the highest rider in each race is what gives the points to the respected manufacturer, the Constructors Championship. That goes to Ducati, 357 points. They clinched it actually last week from the Algarve Grand Prix. Yamaha in 2nd with 309 points. 3rd place went to Suzuki with 240 points, despite not having a win. They did have a lot of consistency. 4th place went to Honda with 214 wins. Thank Marc Marquez for all the wins. 5th place went to KTM with 205 points. And 6th place went to Aprilia with 121 points. Nice to see them in the triple-digit numbers. Now we move into the World Teams Championship for the final standings in the team standings. Of course, that goes to Ducati Lenovo team. Of course, Lenovo, the computer brand, sponsoring Ducati's factory team. They win the teams championship with 433 points. A big margin. Second place, earning 380 points, was the Monster Energy Yamaha MotoGP team. that fielded Fabio Quartararo's Riders' Championship winning bikes. Third place, Team Suzuki X-Star with 307 points. Fourth place, the customer Ducati team, Pramac Racing, had a revolutionary year thanks to Jorge Martin's efforts with 288 points. And fifth place was the factory Honda team, the Repsol Honda team, with 250 points. Let's go down the list of the top 10 or the top 11 here in the final teams championship standing. Sixth place went to the Red Bull KTM factory racing bunch, 245 points. Seventh place went to LCR Honda team with 146 points. Esponsorama Racing, 8th place with 143 points. In 9th place was the Aprilia factory team. Of course, Aprilia Racing Team Grassini with 135 points. In 10th place went to Petronas Yamaha SRT with 96 points. And in last place with just 76 points was the Tech 3 KTM Factory Racing. Let's also take a look at the final standings in the Moto 2 Championship and Moto 3 Championship. While we're at it, of course, we have to look at the other series that support the MotoGP World Championship. So the final World Championship standings in Moto 2 went to Red Bull KTM Ayo rider Remy Gardner, the son of Wayne Gardner, world champion from the KLX bike, Red Bull KTM Ayo, or Ajo. I'll call it Ajo because I don't know how to pronounce it. 311 points for him. Raul Fernandez, his teammate, actually finished second, just a few points back with 307 points. Marco Bezzecchi in third with 214 points. Fourth place, Sam Lowes with 190 points. And fifth place, Augusto Fernandez with 174 points. Let's look at the final constructor standings. Of course, Calyx won all of the races this year. Of course, they field more bikes than anybody else in Moto 2. So they win this with ease at 450 points, winning the Constructors Championship probably miles before the finish line of the season. Second place went to Bosco Scuro with 199 points. They actually got, 3 runner-up finishes and 3 third-place finishes, so that's not bad. MV Augusta, 19 points, and NTS with 11 points. Then we go to the Teams Championship for Moto 2. The top 5 I'll list here was Red Bull KTM Ajo with 618 points. A huge margin of victory compared to second place Alphamark VDS Racing Team with 364 points. Sky Racing Team VR46, which I assume is owned by Valentino Rossi. Yes, that is 303 points in the making of their third place efforts. Indy Aspar Team with 192 points, and fifth place Federal Oil Grassini Racing Moto 2 with 173 points. Now we'll go ahead and look at the tertiary World Championship for motorcycle racing, and that is the FIM Moto 3 World Championship. Let's take a look at the final standings over there. Pedro Acosta, 17 years old of age, and he is a world champion in the Moto 3 scene with Red Bull KTM Ajo supporting him in a KTM bike, 259 points. Then we have Dennis Foggia in second with 216 points. Sergio Garcia in third with 188 points. Jaume Macia in fourth with, it's Jaume Macia. Sorry if I said that wrong. In fourth with 171 points. And Romano Finati in fifth with 160 points. Of course, different supporting manufacturers in this series made it for a much closer Constructors Championship. A 9-point difference between first and second. KTM X this one out. They win the Moto 3 World Constructors Championship with 369 points. Second place went to Honda at 360 points. Gas in third with 266 points, and Husqvarna in fourth with 166 points. All four constructors saw victory in the year. And then we'll look at the top five for the teams championship in the final standings. First place, of course, going to Red Bull KTM Ajo, huge margin of victory, 430 points that they earned. Then the Valresa Gas Aspar team in second with 313 points. Leopard Racing, the Luxembourg team, in third with 288 points. Red Bull KTM Tech 3 finished fourth in the standings with 218 points, and 2 points behind them was the Petronas Sprinter Racing team, owned by Sepang Racing, with 216 points. And then we move on to one more championship, and that is, of course, the Moto E World Cup. The electric bikes had their championship. In fact, that concluded several weeks prior to the year. In fact, actually, make that months. September 19th was their last race. Final standings, Jorge Torres, 100 points he earned flat out. He won the championship, 7 points over Dominique Aguirre with 93 points he earned. Matteo Ferrari, 86 points. That's a pretty good racing name right there. Fourth place, Eric Granado, 84 points, and Alessandro Zacconi in fifth with 80 points at the end of the year. By the way, there was no team championship. However, all the riders had to run the Energia Ego Corsa bike, which made it a single spec series for Moto E. Honestly, this year's MotoGP World Championship was much better than the last year. It had a more exciting season. I think that I got more attracted to the scene. I think MotoGP has just been great. I mean, obviously, with the world more open than it was last year, we got to have some of the better destinations of racing that we didn't get to have last year. And Fabio Quartararo, his story is just amazing to see him come so far and become world champion like that. Shows that motorcycle racing has a bright future ahead. The world of motorcycle racing, that Marquez, his injuries, he still gets it done. In the world of motorcycle racing, the Valentino Rossi is going to leave behind is in great hands for the rest of the 2020s and onwards. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I think that's all for the races that we had to go through. Now, we'll talk about the races that we'll preview. And let's get started with that in just a moment. We'll be back. I'll take a short break, and I'll see you at the next part for our race previews. Okay, we are back. Here, now time to take a look at the racing that we have in store. course, this will be a lot quicker than we usually have in the Below the Yellow Line podcast, as most of the races that are coming up are either repeat or inaugural races, so we don't have to talk too much. But I want to put in my input on what to expect for the upcoming events. Let's get started with the Formula One Qatar Grand Prix. So, of course, like I mentioned before, we had our 3 races in the Americas. We had those races, and then U.S., Mexico, and Brazil. Now we go to the Middle East, where it all began this year. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi. A lot of unknowns across all 3 of these upcoming events. But let's talk about the Losail International Circuit. Of course, if you're a MotoGP fan, you know a lot about this. It's been home of the Qatar Grand Prix every year since 2004. And just by looking at the stats here, as far as like actual car racing, speed car series, I mean, that's a stock car series that used to race in the Eurasian, Middle East, East Asia series and tracks. And GP2 Asia actually had 2 races there, both in 2009. Interesting to note. So there is a bit of a history of racing on 4 wheels at this circuit, but there's still a lot of unknowns. We don't really understand what it's going to look like. So the Qatar Grand Prix is here to fill in basically for the Australian Grand Prix. The Australian Grand Prix, of course, was supposed to start the World Championship. Of course, they immediately moved that forward, as Australia, and still looks like to this day, is far from being most country. One second. Sorry for the interruption. Qatar being on the World Championship is going to be interesting because we've seen races here on 2 wheels, but we've never seen it here on 4 wheels. And now this is our chance. And with the World Championship at stake, we don't know what it's going to look like. And I'm all but curious to see what's going to happen. So I'm going to make my prediction. And this is going to be pretty bold, but we're going to see. We're going to see something we've never seen before. I think it's going to be crazy. Lando Norris is going to get his first win this weekend. And why is that? Well, this track is hard to pass. Obviously, it was made for original intentions of bikes. Obviously, these are cars. They drive differently. They go around the track differently. It's all but certain what it's going to look like. I think we're going to see a McLaren win and take advantage of that. But, wow, Mercedes and Red Bull will all be on their toes from start to finish of the weekend. Can't wait to see what happens when the lights come off. So I'm going to go with Lando Norris. Who's going to come out with the World Championship lead? Max Verstappen's going to hold it, but it's going to be a very slim margin, maybe slimmer than the points that he is already holding over Lewis Hamilton. So probably single-digit number of points. Maybe the same could be said about constructors. Who knows? But let's let the racing do the talking. Next, we're going to discuss another single-seater event that comes around once every fall, every mid to late November. A race of attrition, of unknowns and uncertainties that people talk about months going into the winter calendar in the motorsports global world. The Macau Grand Prix. Let's talk about the Macau Grand Prix. So it's been around for 60 years. It's going to be the 68th race of this prestigious Grand Prix. So the 68th running of the Macau Grand Prix. Unfortunately, we're not going to see the drivers that we usually think of that enter this race, not the best junior Formula drivers in the world racing Formula 3 cars, because of the global restrictions imposed by mainland China, which you need to get into Macau. That essentially means that we will see the Chinese Formula 4 drivers headline the main event. But let's take a look at the history of the race. Of course, last year, with the COVID-affected race, the winner was Hanxiu Leong, also known as Charles Leong. The Macau's driver took the win last year. Now, what did the headline race look like? And, of course, for the Macau Grand Prix, let's look at the Macau Grand Prix winners and the history of the race. So the first race, of course, was won by Eduardo de Carvalho. He drove a Triumph TR2 sports car in the inaugural race back in 1954. So for the 68th running of the year, a lot has changed. Of course, they went from sports cars to Formula Libre, and that to Formula Pacific, and pretty much single-seaters ever since. So in the Formula 3 notion, essentially. Without further ado, let's continue on with the history of this race. Who has won most races here? That is John McDonald, who won 4 times. John McDonald, who is actually of English descent in Hong Kong, where he's lived there. Won there 4 times. Jan Bussell, Antonio Felix da Costa. So these guys all have 2 wins other than McDonald. Jan Bussell, Antonio Felix da Costa, Arsenio Laurel, Jeff Lees, Eduardo Mortara, Felix Rosenquist, Ver Schuppen, and Dan Ticktum. Of course, Dan Ticktum winning that crazy race a few years ago, but I think it was back in 2017 when the 2 leaders crashed on the final corner, and Dan Ticktum opened the gates for Ticktum to take the win. In the 2017 race, that was just outstanding stuff. Now, who has the most wins by entrant by the team? Well, let's take a look at the most wins by team. Of course, Theodore Racing, 8 wins with 7 drivers. Toms. How about Toms? The famous team that's pretty much loyal to Toyota and Lexus. The Toms team, 5 wins with 5 different drivers. Prema Power Team, 3 wins amongst 3 different drivers. WTS Racing, 3 wins. Carlin, 3 wins. And Signature, 3 wins. And then these teams with 2 wins. ASM, Bob Harper Racing, Paul Stewart Racing, West Surrey Racing, and Moto Park Academy. So if you're wanting to watch some of the best in the future, it's usually the Macau Grand Prix that would headline the race. And the Macau Guia race in the Guia Street Circuit, of course, is the other main event. And of course, the Macau Guia race is for touring cars. And let's not forget the Macau race with the motorcycles. And we'll break it all down for you. But let's start off with the drivers that are in this year's race. I'll give you guys some fun facts. All of them are in connection with Chinese descent from either Macau, Chinese Taipei, Hong Kong. Nowhere else outside. Because obviously, as you can tell, these are the drivers of the Chinese Formula 4 roster that were able to show up for this year's race. And hopefully we'll get our traditional grid next year. But it's also great that if you're one of these drivers, you get a huge chance to shine in front of a world audience, likewise to last year. So, obviously, last year's winner, Charles Leong, is in the field with Smart Life Racing Team. He's joined by Liu Jingxi. Then, of course, the other drivers, Andy Chang and Xiongji Chang for the Chengdu Tianjin International Circuit Racing Airport Team. In fact, yeah, an airport sponsors a team. Interesting to see that. UMC Racing Team with Makak Lok and Mili Men, the 2 Macau's drivers. In fact, Meng, he's actually 54 years old. and his teammate is 56 years old. These guys have been racing for quite some time. Then, of course, the Diak team by KRC with the two drivers from Chinese Taipei, Taiwan region, Brian Lee and Li Xing Peng. Champ Motorsport is back, of course. Champ Motorsport, team that's been around for 18 years, is successful in the touring car ranks, especially in TCR Asia. With the drivers this year, we have Patrick Sang and Xingru Hu. Other drivers, and of course, one team, actually three teams that make that have one driver in their entry for the roster. That's Blackjack 21 Racing Team with Xingji Li. Grid Motorsport, the Hong Kong team with driver Nirik Lee. He's 40 years old. He's a very well-known driver for you guys in touring car ranks. The Geek XL Drift team of James Wong and Chao Li. The Ningbo International Circuit team. Yes, a circuit actually fields a team. I know Algarve does that in the European Le Mans series with Zifeng Jing and Lifeng Lin. And then last but not least, the Henmax Motorsport entry of Hong Kong native Yao Ming Huang. And that makes up your lineup for this year's Macau Grand Prix. And of course, the Macau Grand Prix may be just 12 laps, but it is one of the biggest 12-out races for some of these drivers' lives. And I would love to see if Charles Leong can get the job done again. He's just 20 years old. Very, very talented driver. I think he should get a chance to race maybe in Formula 2 one of these years or Formula 3 or whatnot. But certainly he's done very well for himself in his short but very experienced career. So without further ado, we'll talk more about the Macau Grand Prix events, but obviously they will be held throughout the duration of the 19th and 21st of November at the treacherous Macau Guia circuit. And if I mean treacherous, I mean it is one of the hardest tracks to navigate around. Some of the tightest corners and the fastest straightaways. You have to have the best adaptability skills and tolerance for close cornered racing if you want to navigate around here. Otherwise, there'll be a nice wall to greet you if should you miss one of the corners just by the slightest of mistakes. That is Macau in a nutshell. And I don't know. I mean, I once said this, and it was kind of a funny joke, but I once said during one of the motorcycle races that they had when they were doing the warm-up lap, but it said, wait, they're doing the warm-up lap? It looks like they're actually driving around like they're in the race. No. You kind of have to stay at race pace when you warm up around that track because there's hardly any room to spare. Just look at that one GT crash we had about 4 years ago. Insane stuff. With that special event out of the way, and we're going to get some more coming around, like the Snowball Derby and whatnot. So be on the lookout for that, too. That's actually in a few weeks' time. Let's move back into Supercars. For the fourth and final weekend, we race at Sydney Motorsports Park. This time with just 2 races. What is that going to look like? The Sydney Motorsport Park, the Sydney Super Night, rounds 29 and 30 of 31, week 11 of 12. I assume that Anton de Pasquale is going to continue where he left off. As long as Will Brown's pit crew makes more mistakes like they did last week, or if they get the job right, like so in Sunday where Will Brown won. I'm not going to give you a direct prediction, but I think it's going to be down between 2 drivers across the 2 races of Anton de Pasquale and Will Brown. Will we see stuff from Shane Van Gisbergen and Jamie Wynn Cup? Of course we will. But this is the last dance before the Bathurst 1000. Get a week off, and then everybody goes to Bathurst, New South Wales to close out the Supercars Championship. And boy, that race is something else. I can't wait to see how it all happens. Now, we'll move on and talk about, last but not least, this race. And luckily, I'll be able to go to it. And that's the Creventic 24-hour series, 24H series. The first ever 24 hours of Sebring. Now, it's not the first ever 24-hour race at Sebring. That was actually earlier this year. and it was held. It was held in like a production car event that was a production car event that was in that was about like a month ago. Either it was late last month or was it 2 months ago? I can't remember. But we'll put up the I'll pull up the entry list and I'll let you know what my predictions look like and what to expect in the event itself. 24-hour race at Sebring. I mean, as if the 12 hours there weren't treacherous enough, add another 12 and get a full day of action. That's what we're going to get. However, unfortunately, in the last report, a lot of the cars from the European continent that are being shipped over had a bit of a delay, so it's going to take a little while. They're going to push the race start. Instead of Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, it'll be at Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Instead, they'll put the practice and qualifying and all the pre-race scrutineering on the Friday and morning warm-ups and the race on Saturday. And you know what? This is going to be an interesting start time for the race because the race is starting at 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturday with just less than an hour of daylight to spare. And then it's a long night. Yeah, hours 2, 3, and 4 on a 24-hour race are going to be under darkness. If that's not incredible, I don't know what is. I mean, not even the 24 hours of Daytona starts like that. Because, of course, that race is also in January with the daylight savings time. The traditional 12 hours of Sebring is set to be held within the first or second week after daylight savings time changes so that they get less hours of dark throughout the 12-hour race. So this is a treat and a half. I can't wait to see what's going to play out. And, of course, there are championships to be won. I'll talk about that in a moment. But I'll just have to go find out the entry list. It was announced today they changed the race date just by one day to let the cars come in, make sure that there's no issues on that. So I have to pull up the entry list PDF. And I'll give you my predictions to see. Okay, this was updated for 16 November. So yeah, of course they're already in 16 November, so they updated it. I'll go through the predictions class by class. That doesn't mean that someone else could win overall, and I'll explain why when I do. All right, we'll start off with GT3 class. Of course, the class that will likely go for the outright win. We have a lot of cars in the GT3 class that will be able to contest this. And here's a fun fact for this year's 24H series. Only Porsches have won overall across all the races this year. That includes the inaugural race, the 24 Hours of Dubai, GPX Racing, and Herbert Motorsport have won all the other races. Mugello, Paul Ricard. Hockenheimring, however, was won by Hegeli by T2 Racing, and Herbert Motorsport winning again with the last two races. In fact, they've won all but two races this year. So Porsche is perfect. Could anyone stop them in this last-ditch effort to make an effort and get in the way of this powerhouse brand? Or is it going to come down to somebody else? Is it going to come down to Porsche? Maybe it's just another team besides Herbert Motorsport. We'll see. All right, so GT3 class will have Lmp3 Motorsport, number 10, with the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo effort. Drivers Brandon Leach, Tyler Cook, Dennis Feltzer, Seb Morris, and Sebastian Baltasar. A lot of different names here. Semi-pro, pro-am, AM licensed drivers here. Rodronic Racing by TECE. Now, they run Audi R8 Elements GT3s. They've been pretty close in some of the races this year. They'll have Michael Doppelmayr, Marcus Winkelhock, He's a pro-level driver, of course. He used to race in F1. Elder Earhart and Sven Herberger am level drivers as well. This is what makes the series very interesting, is that we get pro drivers and pro-AM drivers, all on the same track. Makes for great racing. Third place, Tresere Competizione. They're an American team racing in a Ferrari with 5 drivers in this car of Alfredo Trisari, Charlie Scardina, Justin Wetherhill, Ryan Dalziel, and Dave Emperingham. That should be another interesting lineup. And I think that if we see more American names, American Canadian names on these drivers, maybe they're more experienced in Sebring. Maybe they've turned more laps around here in GT World Challenge America or the IMSA 12-hour race itself. That will play a part in the race. Herbert Motorsport, of course, the team that's been the favorites this year. We look at car number 91, the 91 Porsche 911 GT3R. That's won all the races, all but 2 races this year. Ralph Bone, Daniel Alleman, and the Renauer twins, Alfred and Robert Renauer. They have been doing great things this year. And then the sister car number 92 with 5 drivers, Joran Harig, Bobby Gonzalez, Wolfgang Triller, Felix Neuhofer, and Marco Seafried. They have actually been under the wing of the 91 car this year. So don't just say that the 91 car is going to win it. They might have some competition, some pretty good competition that you may not know of. And let's not forget, CP Racing, this American team, these drivers may be over 50, but they've turned more laps around Sebring than probably anybody else on the entry list. Running a Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo. Drivers, of course, the owner, Charles Putman. Then we have Charles Espelab, Joe Foster, and Shane Lewis. They actually come close to winning outright on several occasions, including the 12 Hours of Hungary, which was the last race before this one. Then we move on into the GTX class, and of course, those are different comprised GT cars. Vortex V8. I love this team. They have a unique brand, like they've put together a ground-up brand of cars from France. And this team, they're going to race this event overseas in the 24 Hours of Sebring. Now, they didn't have all the best luck this year, but I'd like to see if they can get the job done. Drivers, Philippe Bonnell, he's been running most of the races this year. Boris Gibbon, Sebastian Layu, and Steve Brooks, the 4th and final driver on that list, all AM drivers. Then this team, they've been doing very well, but they have a whole new driver roster. That's number 710, Lippert Motorsport, and they run a Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo. You know, that brand has their own one-make series, all kinds of Super Trofeo series around the globe. They actually finished their World Championship final, like not this weekend, but last weekend. They have Greg Gorski, Gerhard Watzinger, Lance Bergstein, Al Miller, and Kenton Cook behind the wheel of that car. An all-American lineup this time. Completely different drivers than what we've seen Lippert Motorsport field in the past. Should that play a role in the GTX class? 2 more cars in this list. We have, now these cars are pretty interesting. This is a bit of a preview for next year's Creventive 24-hour series. There'll be a 992 make class for next year. Though I think they're going to keep 991. The Porsche 991 spec, they'll just have a 992 class with it for the newer Porsche GT3s in the sole make category for the classes in the series. This one, of course, we have these 2 Porsches. However, they have to run the GTX class until homologation kicks in. So I have the 987 car and the 989 car, both fielded by MRS GT Racing. 987 will have Jeff Courtney, Alexandro Marmurno, and Omar Balkinson. With the 989 car with Rolvino Crease Jr., Hieromino Guzman, Jody Miller, Pedro Torres, and Robert Laurendale in car 989. That's your GTX class. I'll make my predictions at the end. I'm just going through who I'm considering because a lot of these drivers are new. Some of them have raced most of this year. Others are domestically local to the category. And then, of course, we talk about the Porsche 991 class, the one-make cup for Porsche 991s. 907 car will have RPM Racing. This is a very good, I think this might be the favorite to win this class, considering the driver lineup here. We have Andy Lally, Patrick Hewisman, Nicholas Janssen and Tracy Krohn. But don't rule them out. You still have to run the 24 hours, but they have the drivers that could get the job done. Basque Country Racing, they've run all the races here. Basque Country's drivers for this race include Marcel and Kai van Berlo, Geej Beesem and Bob Herbert, all drivers from the Netherlands. Two more lineups. In fact, the 930 MRS GT car does not have the 990 car, does not. They don't have a driver lineup just yet. But the 955 car that this trio, they've been running most of the races this year and getting a few wins in the class along the way. The 955 Willy Motorsport by Ebby Motors, the Romanian team with Sergio Nicoli, Fabrizio Broghi, and Sabino Di Castro. Maybe 3 drivers is better than 4 or 5 sometimes. You got a tighter group, tighter bunch, and I don't know, maybe it takes 3 or 4 or 5. That's what shows what makes the series interesting, because they don't have that many ground rules on driver limits and stuff. But let's carry on now. The Gt4 class. We got a lot of GT4s in this series. Now, mind you, most of the races this year, the Gt4 class would have like 2, 3, 4 cars, 5 cars, I think at most, like from the Dubai 24 hours this year. But this is by far the most amount of Gt4 cars that we've seen all year long since the 24 hours of Dubai in January. Probably one of the other prestigious races of the 24H series calendar. We have a Danish team of Janssen Consult, Eva Solo. They run a Mercedes AMG GT4 car 415. We'll have an all-Danish lineup of Søren Janssen, Jan Engelbrecht, Hendrik Bolesev, and Klaus Bertelsen. They're all AM-level drivers. Then we have an American team. This is an American team, all-American drivers. Team ACP, Tanger Associates. We have Jim Norman, Josh Norman, Ken Goldberg, and Catsby Jones. They'll drive a BMW M4 GT4, the most successful manufacturer in the GT4 class all year long, but of course with another team. I'll get there in a minute. Heart of Racing team, yes, the team that won the 2021 IMSA Michelin Endurance Cup. They won the WeatherTech Sprint Cup Championship this year. Ian James and Roman DeAngelis will be in the lineup. They are fresh from Road Atlanta. They'll have Gray Newell and Alex Riberas. Nice to see Alex Riberas back in the car. He'll be in an Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT4. This class might be fun to watch. And then, of course, the class that's going to close out what is likely their championship season. Of course, this team from Canada, the ST Racing BMW M4 GT4, led by owner-driver Samantha Tan, Chandler Holt, John Miller, Nick Whitmer, and Bryson Morris. These BMW drivers, they're actually going to go to GT3 next year as part of the new M4 GT3, and they're looking to close out a championship season with another win in class like they did in the 24 hours of Dubai. Then Nola Sport, I don't know why I said 5th place. Nola Sport this is a new team for the 24H series, an all-American team. It's a surprise of not me at all, because obviously I knew we were going to get right off the bat a lot of domestic teams for this race specifically. Number 470 Nola Sport, they're running a Porsche Cayman 718 CSMR with Alex Mayer, Zach Anderson, Anthony Noble, Jason Hart, and Matt Travis. Drivers that we've seen in IMSA and the SRO events that have been ran in America. 2 more teams. I have no idea what's going to happen here at GT4, but this looks probably like the best class of all. Rentec Motorsports, number 489, Mercedes AMG GT4, will have 3 members of the Ducote family, David, Chapman, and Wayne, and Kyle Marcelli, and Alain Metny. That's a 5-driver lineup in a Mercedes AMG GT4. I think Carl Marcelli is going to be really helpful as far as experience goes. And last but not least, the number 499 Car Collection Motorsport Audi R8 LMS GT4. I think this team might be one that can keep up with the BMWs if they can. Jose Garcia, Daniel Miller, Patrick Niederhauser. He's a big-time Audi driver. And Patrick Cole. Actually, Patrick Niederhauser, I think he was part of the Santilic Racing bunch that won the 8 Hours of Indy not too long ago. Hard to believe it was just, 3 weeks ago that race happened. One car is being ran in the P4 class. That is the number 82 BMW M Motorsport, BMW M4 GT3, because the BMW M4 GT3 is not homologated yet for FIA GT3 regulations. They cannot be put in the GT3 class until next year when that process is finished. Bill Oberlin, Robbie Foley, James Clay, Neil Verhagen, and Max Hesse are in that lineup for that car. They do have a legit shot to win this race outright. If anybody's out there to stop the Porsches from going perfect this year, it might just be that team. But then again, it's a brand new car that we've never seen them being put to the test, let alone Sebring. It's a hard track to even just run a lap around in the first place. Then you got to do it for 24 hours. Can that car sustain 24 hours? If they win this race overall, it would be a huge test pass for the brand. Now we move into the TCE division with the TCR class and the TCX class. We'll start off with the TCR class with the FIA TCR regulations. Championship leading entry, of course, the number 1 or the 112. They're both pretty much leading the championship as well. The brand as a whole. Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing, fielding Volkswagen Golf GTR TCRs. The one car will have for this race the traditional lineup of Konstantin Kletzer, Emil Herdahel, Fabian Dans, and Jasmine Pressing, while the 112 car will have 2 Finnish drivers, an Italian, of course, of Antti Buri, a semi-pro driver, Kari-Pekka Laskonen, and Roberto Ferri in a 3-driver pack for that car. As for the Dutch team, the Breukers team, that's owned by Ivo and Luke Breukers, father-son duo. Number 101, Red Camel Jordans.nl. They'll field an Audi RS3 LMS DSG TCR. Ivo Breukers, Luke Breukers, Kim Holmgaard, and Dominique Bastien in that machine, car 101. 188 car is the last of the TCRs to be in this race. That is the AC Motorsports Audi RS3 LMS DSG TCR of Stefan Perrin and Matthew Dedry. Will 2 drivers be enough to win in a race like this? I don't know. It's up to them to prove us wrong. And then we talk the TCX class, where they have 3 entries in this category. The TCX class will start off with the class that's the car that's been showing up for most of the races. How about 65-year-old Colin White? The Brit is continuing to field his own team and driving in it in the process. Give a call to that guy. Cedibus Engineering will get the number 278 Janetta G55. Of course, Colin White himself is driving the car. Jean-Francois Bruno, Matt Rivard, Joe Beers, and Warren Dexter field the rest of that car. Number 226 Nordschleife Racing Ligier JS2R of Guilherme Roman, Luca Ayari, Cedric Huot, and Michael Sullenbach. And then the number 302 Fun M Motorsport car will be fielded with a BMW M240i Racing Cup car with Roger Bogues, Benito Tagli, and Harald Reddick. So now I'm going to make my class picks. I went through all the entries for this race. It's a lot of cars. I'm going to be very honest and give you my predictions for all the class wins, and I'm going to give you something interesting at the very end. Winning the GT3 class for this race, I'm going to go ahead and take the easy pick, the number 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche 911 GT3R with Albert and Alfred Renauer, Daniel Alleman, and Ralph Bone. They've won all but 2 races outright this year. They'll get another class win to close out a nice season. The GTX class winner, in my opinion, will be, and I looked at all of them, and it's hard to make a a bet because these drivers I've hardly seen before. I'm going to take the number 701 Vortex V8 Vortex 1.0, driven by Felipe Bonnell, Boris Gimmon, Sebastian Layou, and Steve Brooks. All French linemen, a French creation of a car. Who do I have to win the 991 class? I will take the number 907 RPM Racing Porsche 991 GT3 Cup, driven by Nick Janssen, Patrick Huisman, Andy Lally, and Tracy Krohn. I think that's a perfect lineup for a perfect class-winning pair, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are in the top 5 overall, maybe at one point or the other during the race. The Gt4 class is probably at the most competitive right now, but as far as winning the Gt4 class, I believe after 24 hours, this is going to be an interesting one. I mean, I still think ST Racing is going to do it. I mean, listen, there's a lot of inexperience in this class as much as there are really good lineups. So I believe that it's going to be ST Racing winning this one. Samantha Tan, John Miller, Chandler Hull, Nick Whitmer, Bryson Morris, all BMW prospects. They're going to finish strong in their championship leading season. In fact, I think that team is actually going for the outright overall championship too, believe it or not. It's kind of like what we saw at the Nürburgring with the, I forgot the team name that won outright, but despite finishing 71st overall, because they had such a good amount of points that they earned that they were still able to win the overall championship. But a BMW, like a BMW like 330i won the NLS VLN championship. That felt, it feels like ages ago. I have to recall who it was, but that's what happened. So I kind of expect it to happen again. We'll just see where the points go. And then the TCE division, I'm going to pick for the TCR class. There's just 4 for this one. While Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing usually prevails in this race because they have such good experience with TCR cars, I think that the father-son duo owned team of Red Camel Jordans.nl will have the chemistry to keep it up. And I like the chemistry between Evo and Luke Breakers. They are really good at these endurance races. I don't know too much about Kim Holgard or Dominic Bastien. I've seen a little bit of Bastien before, but I think they're going to win the TCR class in the TCE division for one last time in 2021. And then in the 3-car TCX class, I'm going to take the number 278 CWS Engineering Genetta G55. I've seen Colin White. I've seen Jean-Francois Bruneau. I've not seen Matt Rivard, Joe Beers, or Warren Dexter, but I think that's a good enough trio to get the job done and win that class. And now my last prediction, and I said for you guys to hold off until the end and wait for what I wanted to present to you. So let me do that right now. The car I think is going to win this race overall, and I know it's going to be a long shot, number 82 BMW M Motorsport BMW M4 GT3. Yes, the car that's not even homologated yet into FIA Group GT3 standards will win this race in their North American debut and their 24-hour debut with Bill Oberlin, Robbie Foley, James Clay, Neil Verhagen, and Max Hesse. That's like an all-star lineup, considering the fact that it's really a test run for the brand to see if the car can withhold pretty much all of its characteristics and components for a 24-hour period at the toughest track in the world at Sebring. It's going to be fun to watch, and I can't wait to watch it in person. So that's going to be really, really fun of an experience. I can't wait to be there. It will be awesome. So yeah, I think this is a good time to end the Below the All podcast. I just do want to send out my condolences to the family and friends of Don McCowart, NASCAR veteran driver who spent a lot of years, very known for his partying lifestyles off the track, but that was just who he was. Of course, Mike Harris, South African Formula One driver, made one start in the 1962 South African Grand Prix. And of course, how could we not forget the incredible Bob Bondurant, the American racing pioneer who was the first American driver to give Shelby American a World Sports Car Championship on a global stage. And just an amazing person, an amazing driving instructor. He was 88 years old. He won his class in the 1962 Le Mans 24 Hours. He was part of the revolutionary Ford GT40 that we all know and love from the years in 1966 to 1970. Those years, it was all contribution from the driving of Bob Bondurant. He drove a few times in NASCAR on the road courses and several Formula One Grand Prix. He scored some points along the way. We learned about that loss during the Petit Le Mans broadcast, and that was pretty sad. So I'll be back next week with episode 138 of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. Thank you all so much for joining tonight. Thank you, Danny, for showing up. And also thanks for the birthday wishes. That's all great. I'll be signing off. We'll see you guys next week.